Let's check in with the maestro himself. What's he doing? He's cutting some carrots. Fizz, thanks for joining us this morning. It's been a while.
Morning, Troy. Yes, it's been a little while since we're on RGR, but I'm always listening.
Oh, you are. You've fast become everyone's best friend, really. You're taking over my world and everyone else's world. It's great.
Yeah, stole Daz from you. Sorry.
How are you this fine morning?
Hectic trying to get lunches ready for the 4 Fizzlets. So it's always a bit nuts, but I don't know why, but they've all slept in this morning. So sometimes that's good. Sometimes that makes it harder at the other end trying to get them all to school on time.
Oh, cool. So we might have a little invasion of the Fizzlets at some stage in the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, fair chance.
Yes. What a bonus. What a bonus. And who's in the background? Is Jane in the background there trying to stay behind your big wings?
Yes, Jane's just got home from her morning swim. She's in a good rhythm down at Eastern Beach every morning. So
get out.
Yeah, she's loving it. The cold water stuff has been really good. The space and time every morning, and the water temperature is down to about 13 degrees. So she comes home a little bit chilly, but the benefits outweigh the difficulties.
Is 13 degrees super chilly? Like, would most people... 13 would be... What a cold shower? What's a cold shower?
Yeah, around about that. No, probably a little bit
cooler.
Warmer. I don't know. Yeah, it's cold enough when you get in, but ultimately it's good for you. It's the hardest bit's getting out and being wet and walking back to the car at Eastern Beach because the car park's not so close.
Oh, you've got me in the background there on the laptop. This is that's weird.
Oh,
hello.
Yeah, that is weird.
Hi, Jane. She can't hear us because he's got his earphones in. Hey, we've got some questions, and I know you would love to spend some time on them, talking about them, plus the other ones that stream on in as we go. So I really appreciate your time. And quickly introduce yourself. Whereabouts do you work, and where could people get a hold of you if they wanted to, if their questions didn't come through in time?
Yeah, so I'm a senior physiotherapist at Cryoback Sports Medicine Centre. So the big clinic on the Latrobe Terrace, just above Cardinia Park there. So one of my patients actually saw my certificates the other day. So it's coming up to 20 years being a physio. And I've pretty much always worked in private practice with lots of varying clients. And I guess that's what keeps me enjoying and engaged with the program because it's not just sports people that we see. And the clinic had a bit of a pivot and a shift probably 10 years ago where there was this component of people not coming to see us as general practitioner physios because they had this feel that if you weren't a sports person, you weren't allowed to walk into our clinic. But realistically, sports is probably 20 to 30% of what we deal with. And 70% of what we deal with is public health bits and pieces and things that are annoying people or they're finding difficult in their day-to-day lives or sleep interruption from pain is a really significant thing that we deal with all the time. So we're very much community-based health realistically, but with some of that expectation from a sports background of getting really good results for those sports people to maximise their performance, I guess we have a more aggressive take on how we can get people the very best capacity they can be instead of kind of being good enough, which I sometimes feel that clients that have seen other clinicians around the traps and sometimes in our public health system where the level that we're trying to get people to discharge from, say, hospital is not the level that we want to get them to in the medium to long term. So we push hard to get the best results that we can for people.
We've got a fair few people saying good morning to you. I don't know, you can't see the chat, obviously, but the Squiz says hello, no. Jano says hello, Amanda Glasson says, g'day, Fizz. Great to have you on board. Let's rip into some of these questions, and they are anonymous, so hope, and I can see that they're listening, which is makes it slightly non-anonymous, but... Someone's asked, can you slow or stop arthritis? Good one. I have sore thumb joints. It's because she's probably been chatting on RGR solidly for the last 6 months. But she's got sore thumb joints. Is it arthritis? Yeah. Can you slow it down? Can you fix it up? What's the go?
So arthritis is a complex condition overall. So there's a few different, types of arthritis that we get. So we have osteoarthritis that generally affects our larger weight-bearing type joints and gives us pain related to that. Rheumatoid type arthritis usually affects more of our smaller joints, and that is actually an autoimmune type disease where the body unfortunately starts to degrade its own self and certainly creates pain and inflammation and swelling. So ultimately, all arthritis benefits from movement And all arthritis benefits from being stronger. So the muscles that support those joints going backwards and reducing their capacity to produce force and cushion the impact on the joint means that we end up with more pain. So trying to find that balance of not doing activities and specific things that clearly aggravate your symptoms, but not avoiding movement and activity overall, because we know that if we do that, the nourishment of the joint actually becomes worse. So joints like movement. One of the pain physios in Adelaide, over in Tandania, he very much talks about movement. What does he say? He says motion is lotion. And all of our joints like movement and activity. So even the ones that start to get sore, instead of resting them and saying, oh, everything hurts, try and find those movements and activities that actually don't necessarily hurt or don't make your symptoms worse. A lot of the time we've got symptoms, but if you move, you kind of find that your symptoms actually improve with movement and activity. So arthritis as a disease process is really tricky from a measurement point of view. When we look at, say, x-rays that ultimately GPs and radiographers sometimes report on and sort of talk about end-stage arthritis or grade 4 arthritis, we see some of those people functioning really well when they have a mindset of keep going, stay strong and be active. They actually do better than the person that says my pain is debilitating and I will stop moving and being active. So movement, strength and activity. Often there's some really specific exercises that I guess through our expertise we can find that people won't find for themselves through self-exploration sort of stuff. So it's certainly in a physio area, but we know that massage and pushing and prodding, manual therapy techniques are less than effective and movement and strength is the key.
Public opinion would still be that cracking your knuckles leads to arthritis. Is that true?
No, totally false.
Yes!
There was a study that tried to look at it and they sort of showed that you had to do it every hour for 24 hours a day for like 4 weeks to have perhaps some progression or change on any measurement. So it's not really as bad as we have been postulated, what your parents often will say about it.
Don't crack your knuckles.
Ultimately for me, I kind of go, if you're doing it with high force or unpredictable movements or positions or really progressive or awkward positions, I'd say it's probably not good for the joint. But if it's relatively simple and minor positions and you've got better movement afterwards and it encourages movement, that's a good thing.
Love it. I've just introduced Lockie to cracking knuckles. Mainly he sits still, laying on the couch with his hands over his ears because he feels sick about the cracking noise, and I just pull all his toes and crack them all and crack all his fingers. It's hilarious, and then I crack his ears. So you're not going to die, Lockie. Hey, I'm probably this is another question. I'm probably the same age as your mum, maybe older. This is my mum. I am fit and active, but I have no strength in my arms, especially the right arm. So for me, hanging washing on the line is annoying as I have to use my left hand to lift my right arm. Does the Fizz know why? And are there any exercises I can do to make it better to lift things and also to get things down from high places?
So certainly how you position your shoulder blade impacts how you can move your arm. And what we find is that a lot of people don't have great scapular or shoulder blade positioning, and that really puts the shoulder in a compromised position to get up and overhead. So teaching people how to move their shoulder blade better with some quirky exercises that are probably fairly hard to describe and realistically needs specific input to be precise and get them done correctly. But certainly that's one component: improve scapular positioning, improving strength in the muscles that allow us to get overhead, and also ruling out some pathologies that mean that our shoulder can start to get stiff. And if our shoulder's kind of stiff and we're trying to work against the resistance of our shoulder, plus the muscles are relatively weak, that impacts how you can actually get your shoulder overhead. So certainly seeing a physiotherapist to try to get the specifics on which parts are impacting your inability to get your arm overhead should have you with some specific exercises. So a lot of the time for the stiffness, we'll get people doing stuff where they've actually walked their hand up the wall. So it's kind of like active assisted, and you can use the wall to gradually get your arm over your head and helping stretch it out. So some stretching can be helpful. What we have to just be careful of is that we've not got we often get degenerate pathology in older shoulders. So for me, an older shoulder is probably over 50. So it's not really actually that old, but we see that we lose blood supply to some of our muscles in our shoulder. And we've got to be mindful and careful of some of those. So it really does need assessment and specific input to know that you're doing exactly the right stuff for your pathology and where you're at in life.
That's brilliant. And they've replied on here, said thanks very much. What's the best one type of exercise for a painful sciatica? Everyone's looking for a quick fix, aren't they? Is that?
It's a little bit like that. Again, it is tricky doing interviews like this and trying to provide specific advice to people without actually looking at the causes of what's actually going on. And I guess that's where, to me, trying to find the cause of the problem rather than just treat the symptoms is the key. So when people describe sciatica, we're talking about the sciatic nerve is the largest nerve in our body that comes out of 3 different levels of our spine and joins into one big nerve. So it's a really thick structure. And because of that, it can get irritated in lots of different parts of its journey through leaving the actual spinal canal, through where it comes out into muscles in our gluteal area around our bum, and also through its journey down further through the legs. So trying to find where it's actually getting irritated is a big part of it. Overall, the most common part is getting it irritated in our lumbar spine, so somewhere in our lower back, and relates to movement of our spine, usually to fix it. Again, what I do as a McKenzie therapist is usually look for what we call a directional preference. And for most backs, probably because of the reality of our lifestyles being more about flexion, sitting and bending forwards type tasks, we find that ultimately the best fix for it is the reverse movement. So often it's doing extension type exercises. So lying on your tummy and kind of like doing a push-up movement where you're arching backwards can be a good place to start to get the back moving. And for me, what I look for is this phenomenon, this thing called centralization. So if someone's got pain going down their leg, we call that peripheral pain. So it's going further away from the site of where we think it's actually getting irritated. So that's called peripheralization. Our best indicator, if we're doing the right activity or movement that's going to help resolve that person's symptoms, is when we get centralization. So the pain comes back closer to where the area we think it's actually coming from. So it's coming from their back. We see it go away from their calf, maybe come into their hamstring, their upper leg, sometimes end up in their bum, and eventually we clear that and we get it back into their back, and we can be really comfortable and sure that A, we're doing the right thing to help them, and B, the symptoms are coming from something going on irritating the nerve roots as they exit the back. So that's probably the most common presentation we see and the most effective way of resolving symptoms initially. Often what we then need to do is do some strength programming. Again, I take a bit of a different tangent compared to lots of other clinicians with my McKenzie background, and then one of my other good friends is a physio up in Werribee. He does this strengthening program, piggybacking on that thought process that we've got this directional preference, and we give people specific exercises that have them overall more bent backwards as they do their exercise rather than things that take them forward. So some of that can be really simple. Instead of doing, say, a front squat where the force is coming from the front of their body and pulling them forwards, we'll do a back squat. Yep. And that means that they're more likely to be sort of slightly bent backwards. So again, getting the specifics around why you've got that sciatic symptom means that we get a specific program that is individualized. And that's the, I guess, the strength of experienced clinicians is that they can pick those things out and give you a better program overall that is specific to you and your condition.
How do you manage expectations when someone does want a quick fix? Aside from giving them accurate advice and then telling them, hey, by the way, you're in a serious state here. This is a long-term thing, and I'm talking 2 years. And someone's like, I got to get back to work. Like, I can't work right now. How do you manage that other than just be brutal and say, there's no other way around this?
Yeah, it's definitely complex, and trying to be accurate rather than giving false hope of a quick fix is a real balancing act. And again, probably that thing that as a clinician, I get feedback that I am different to other people that they've seen. So I think it is the art of being a physiotherapist is trying to get people on board with that journey that they're going to need to go on, so that their compliance and consistency with movement and exercise actually is good in the end. Because we know that although there's definitely some benefit from our manual therapy, pushing, prodding type stuff in the short term, in the long term, what they do away from the clinic, movement, exercise, activity. And again, for lots of people, that word exercise is intimidating and confronting. So we certainly talk about movement, activity, rather than exercise for lots of those conditions, and often that'll get them that buy-in. Probably my take on it as a physio is very much, if a client is thinking and expecting and wanting just manual therapy to fix them, I'll probably spend the first 2 sessions not touching them at all and really trying to set up that exercise component to them with lots of education and description around the reality of things not being that easy to fix. And ultimately, there's some key little things that I can demonstrate to them about how I can change their flexibility or their symptoms with some of the movement and activity kind of stuff, and virtually talk to them about they've got a provisional diagnosis that I think they're going to be an extension responder, or they're going to do well with improving their scapular positioning. Let's work on that first and confirm that that's the right scenario. And then once we're clear on that, then some of the other things I can do in the clinic are worthwhile, and that improves their consistency and compliance and buy-in to doing what I need them to do away from the clinic. And I think that's probably how I get them on that journey of self-empowerment and knowing that they have to be part of the solution and that they're actually going to fix themselves. I'll give them the tools to get that fix. And so it's a lot of descriptive words that are different to how they've been told about it in the past. Some of my job is often quite a little bit easier, because a lot of the time as a senior clinician, I get people who've seen other practitioners and are getting referred into me. So they kind of have been through a process where they've had things that haven't worked. And so therefore they're quite ready to take a different tangent and take a different journey to actually get the result that they were wanting.
Beautiful, man. Someone out there has got an 80-year-old dad and they've started learning Tai Chi at home and online. Do you know much about its benefits?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Probably 15 to 20 years ago, there were some really good studies that were done in some nursing homes. And what they showed was that doing Tai Chi, and some of the clients couldn't even stand up to do their Tai Chi. They were just doing sitting-based movement and activity Tai Chi kind of stuff. So it's got proprioception and control involved in it. But what they showed with the clients that were doing Tai Chi consistently in a nursing home, it actually reduced their frequency of falls.
Wow.
And in our older clients, falls can be catastrophic. So that traumatic fall where someone fractures their hip certainly has long-term ramifications on health and well-being. So trying to avoid falls can be a massive part of our over 70 clients. So certainly, the Tai Chi has huge benefits to that and challenging those systems. So it's a bit of that old school scenario of use it or lose it sort of scenario. And what we find with a lot of our older clients is that they start to not put themselves into those vulnerable positions functionally because they know that they are scared about having a fall. And so some of it is definitely that challenge to those body systems and really getting physical change to that. And other parts of it is realistically getting their own confidence that they have that safety to challenge themselves and really be better for doing that exercise. It does have a balance component to it. So great that he's exploring that, because certainly stereotypically our older men are difficult to get into some of those more left field type movements and exercise sort of things.
Sure.
And so they get a bit stubborn in their old age. So that's great that he's exploring something new and really taking it on board and seeing it as a challenge. And, certainly we can still get improvements and changes in our later life. It doesn't have to be that I'm too old to do that thing. Everyone can get benefit from that type of low impact movement and activity.
I got someone on here on the chat. My left knee is noticeably weaker than the other. Walking is fine, but stairs, lifting and pressure and any more weight bearing is no good. I'm guessing he wants some help with maybe strengthening up other areas of his body.
Yeah, so definitely, again, that's kind of usually coming back to that grungy osteoarthritic type component within that knee. And again, I was involved in a study where we actually delivered exercise over the phone to clients. And what we found was that they reduced their medication use, they improved their activity, they reported far less pain from doing really basic, simple exercise sort of stuff. So with those knees, we've got to find movements and activities that we can challenge them with that don't irritate them. So a component of that is very much, often I'll start with clients just doing quads contractions. So just contracting that quadricep muscle on the front of their thigh and virtually getting that brain nerve connection working to their quad, again, makes a massive difference to how that muscle's cushioning the impact on the joint, and that helps it to settle down. So I'll generally ask clients to do sets of about 20 quads contractions, but get them to do it 5 to 10 times a day. So they're aiming to do somewhere between 100 to 200 quads contractions a day. And often within 2 weeks, those people kind of go, it doesn't feel as vulnerable. My leg feels stronger. And that's just the neurological connection working better, rather than saying their muscle is physically bigger and stronger. It can't happen that quickly, and it only happens from loaded type exercises. So the neurological inhibition to the muscle is the key. So if we can get better contact and get that muscle brought back online so that you can access it, then you'll find when you do lots of those activities of steps and stairs, the muscle is cushioning the impact on the knee better. So that's a good starting point. Simple things like sit to stand and doing step ups, where I'll often get the client to put their sore knee and keep their foot on the step and keep it on the top step, and then they'll step their other leg down and up. But this is their sore knee staying on the top step, and so they're going down to the other step, bringing it back up with their other leg, but they're really weight bearing on that top leg.
Yes.
And we therefore get the muscle working, and it's virtually quite predictable for the knee, because the muscles say, I know I need to stay switched on or I'm going to fall over, but there's no movement or impact on that leg. And it works really quite well as a step up. So it's quite different how normal people would do step ups without that input.
That is so clever. And we're loving the motion is lotion. Loving that call. I love memory.
Yeah,
that's a good bookmark.
Definitely.
Not that we don't know that, but I mean, everyone usually, when you go to a doctor, they go, you just got to keep moving. You got to keep exercising. You got to get we hear it a billion times a day, but we don't do it. Is swimming a good thing for your back?
Yes, overall. Hold on. Sorry, I've done something.
Or even doing like aerobics, or is pool work good for people that can't move generally from the aggression of just general gravity, going to the pool and doing exercise? Is there good benefits in that?
Yeah, huge benefits of people who've either got difficulties with axial loading, so compression of our spine from gravity often will irritate lots of our backs. So as much as I say there's this directional preference where often arching backwards is better than flexing forwards, ultimately axial compression can be an issue, and they can not tolerate doing some of our exercises on land.
Yeah.
When we take them into the pool, it's virtually like we take gravity away, and there's less compression on their spine, and they can often do movement and activity that they're not tolerating on land. So it has a real benefit to getting people's confidence back with movement and activity from a movement point of view. When we swim, obviously we swim flat and we're virtually arching backwards. So again, if I'm thinking that someone's got a directional preference that extension is good for them, getting them into that arch backwards position, so when they're breathing, they have an arch further, that has overall philosophically a scenario where I'd say it's an extension bias exercise. And so therefore they're putting their spine into a position that is often conducive to helping settle that irritation that's often coming from philosophically disc type injury kind of stuff. So it has benefit from that. Getting people then upright in the water and walking forwards and walking backwards and sideways and doing squats and calf raises and swinging their legs around and doing all this movement that, again, they often can't do on land. You'll find that they really get benefit to how strong they are in the muscles that support themselves. So water is really bloody heavy when you try and push it out of the way.
Yeah.
So when you walk forwards through water, it's so much more resistance against your body than walking through air. And so we use that principle to kind of go, oh, Rue's here, this is Alana.
Oh, don't worry, it's my last question because everyone's asking where's the Fizzlets.
So hydrotherapy for backs, for knees, for ankles, for weight-bearing joints, getting moving in the water can be really great. Certainly swimming as a cardiovascular exercise, if you're someone who has good technique, it can be a really good, valuable exercise for you to do. for me, where my swimming technique and just my body density doesn't work that well, I spend more time trying not to drown rather than going forwards in the water. And my shoulders give up before I actually get a good cardiovascular workout. It's not great exercise for me, but if I had a weight-bearing joint issue, the walking and the activity would be good.
Righto, who are the guests? Let's get the real stars on the show now. Everyone's wanting to know where the Fizzlets are.
They're finally up and about, starting to move around. So
you might. We won't be able to hear. They won't be able to hear us talk. That's all.
Yeah, if I go out of my Bluetooth earphones, will that be too fuzzy, noisy in the background?
No, go on.
Right?
Give it a go.
Give it a go. Let's try that.
Let's give it a go. This is brilliant.
Righto.
Oh, here we are. That's great. Yeah, I can hear you very well. Hello.
This is Charlotte.
Charlotte.
Say good morning, Shasha.
Say good morning to all the listeners. They're asking about the Fizzlets. Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear me? Charlotte,
we're working out.
good morning.
Hi.
Are you the first one out of bed today to lead the charge?
No.
Don't say what you do.
I would say Phoebe. I'll definitely say Phoebe's own.
Who was the first, Alana? Who was the first out of Phoebe?
Phoebe was up first.
Charlotte next.
How typical.
Oh, that's good.
Shasha sitting having some breakfast.
Lovely.
Basically, I was after Phoebe.
Oh, you were after Phoebe. What time are they off to school, Fizz?
So
Pretty soon.
yeah, we've got to be there at 10 to 9. So yeah, they're up and going now. Samara's walking to school often, so she's up and out of home a little bit earlier.
Oh, cool. How far? How many k's is the walk?
We drop her up the hill and she walks with a friend a few k's.
That's
there's a
awesome.
group of them that all walk together. It's been really good. And again, that philosophical thought process of try and get as much movement and activity in your day-to-day life that you don't perceive as being exercise. And again, demonstrating that to our kids and getting them to kind of go from an early age, movement and activity is a good thing for me to just have in my day-to-day life, and it doesn't have to be structured exercise. You know, with older clients, we talk to them about trying to park a little bit further away from the shopping centre instead of getting the best park, and just walking an extra 200 metres each day has value. So there's some good things around that.
I'm going to steal you for one last question, and it relates to a few myself, but also a few boys that played basketball. Yoo-hoo!
Tamara is just about ready to go, I think.
Oh, are you going to walk to school in that?
Yes.
March on in your best. That's a cool uniform. That looks very regal. It's lovely.
Yeah,
Very nice. Cool little collar.
Yeah.
I love it. A couple of boys. I played my first game of basketball about a year and a half yesterday. I'm feeling not too bad, to be honest. I absolutely lathered myself in deep heat before I went to the game. Compression strap on my left calf, stretched, and walked away all right. But my forehead feels sore on my back. But anyway, for a bunch of guys that are getting back into sport, what's a couple of tips to make sure that you can continue playing for the whole season at least, or we want to stay on the court as long as possible for the next 15 weeks. For us old guys, what can we do in between? What can we do pre-game and what can we do post-game to keep some very unfit people on the court?
Right. So you've given us the difficult scenario. Preparation to play and getting your body resilient and tolerant to what you're about to do has huge value. So there's some really good research around this thing that we call the chronic versus acute work ratio. So ultimately, if you've done nothing for 4 weeks and then you increase your load dramatically, you're more likely to get an injury. If you build your progress steadily, and so that over 4 weeks you've got 4 weeks ago you were doing 20 minutes of running or something, and then that's built and built and built, you'll find that you're actually less likely to get injured. So certainly from that point of view, preparation to an activity like that is the key. When you've missed that opportunity, I guess trying to be careful with not doing what you thought you could do 20 years ago on the court and being patient with getting your body to adapt to it. Again, you're less likely to get an injury.
Yeah.
Once you've made that decision and you haven't done that preparation to be ready, ultimately it's all about recovery. So the things for recovery that help is definitely hydration.
Yep.
So ultimately the equation is 35 mils of water per kilogram of body weight per day. So we've done this before many months ago.
3,500, far out.
So remember that at 100 kilos, you have to have 3.5 liters of water per day.
I might be 100 kilos, whatever. Don't use me.
It's just the easiest equation. Just 100 kilos is straightforward.
Yeah, you're not having a go. You're not nothing to do with
nothing
me.
about your weight at all.
Nothing to do with me.
I've got no idea. So hydration is one thing that people get wrong all the time, and it feels hard to get that often if you're coming from not drinking any water at all, and you've got to watch your diuretics. So tea, coffee, and alcohol all mean that you've got to drink more water per day if you're having those ones that actually have you going the reverse direction. So being mindful of those things, so especially historically in Australia post-sport, we have this culture that alcohol is involved, and it just ruins your recovery.
Yeah.
You know, even just a couple of beers means that you're just not ready to go again next time as well as you would have been if you actually had proper hydration. So water is the best thing. So hydration, sleep. Sleep is hugely underrated by most people, and lots of people have really poor sleep routines, and so they don't recover as well from sport, exercise, and activity. So trying to actually kind of get to bed that half an hour earlier rather than getting stuck on social media or watching some TV program that's not actually going to be life-changing. Try and get rid of those things and get into a good sleep routine. So I know a lot of people have TVs in bedrooms, and I know a lot of people are on their phones just before they go to sleep. There's some good research around that sort of stuff, just saying that it just doesn't set up your brain to switch off as well. And if you don't get that deep sleep, you're missing out on recovery. So those two things are somewhat simple, but things that people get wrong all the time.
Just don't do, yeah. Is it going to
On top of that, go into hydrotherapy. So certainly water-based movement and activity has a huge role in actually getting you recovered from sport. And I still think in the years to come, we'll find some better research goes into the hydrostatic pressure that we get and the improvement in our lymphatic system. So our lymphatic system is probably massively underrated in the general population. But I was reading a post last night about he's a guy that runs a post called Stop Chasing Pain, and he's a chiropractor from United States. He talks about the lymphatic system a lot, and he's got this thing called a lymphatic mojo system where he gets you moving your body different ways to get your lymphatic system working better. And he had a statement last night that said, if your lymphatic system stops working, you die in 48 hours. So it's your waste product removal. It's like your garbage trucks take all that waste away from metabolic activity. So when we do sports and we increase our metabolic activity, there's all this waste product that the cells spit out that is toxic to our body realistically. So carbon dioxide, we breathe it out all the time, but there's other stuff that gets stuck in our cells. And if it gets stuck there and not cleared by the lymphatic system, we get ongoing inflammation and irritation of the tissues, and it virtually creates a toxic buildup. So getting the lymphatic system flowing and moving by doing movement and activity, even though you're sore, will help clear those waste products out of those muscles. If you do it in deeper water, so, for a big tall bloke like you, Troy, you can get your toes 2 meters under the water.
Yes.
And that pressure from the water pushes the lymphatic system better and helps clear it out of your legs more effectively and efficiently. So pool movement and activity. So the movement helps, but the hydrostatic water pressure helps as well. And ultimately with that, I think we've shown that it really doesn't make a big difference on the temperature. It's more about getting into the water.
Right.
So whatever is accessible for you. So if you don't tolerate the kids' pool down at Eastern Beach, getting to a warm indoor pool is still going to have benefits. Right. So again, compliance and consistency of those things rather than it's too hard to do 13-degree water, and so therefore I'm not going to do it at all.
So I'm going to benefit if I just run down the beach straight after this show, and I notice all the footballers, they always get photos in the Herald Sun. They just sit in the water there and stand there in their little Speedos and rest their legs. That's great. So today I'll be very beneficial. It'll be very beneficial for me to go down to St. Leonard's straight after this show and sit in the water for how long?
Look, there's lots of different scenarios. They've talked about contrast bathing, and certainly the footy clubs have the ice bath sort of stuff after the programs. They've got 3 different protocols that they've tried running. So if you're really sore, they talk about 10 minutes just straight in cold water being valuable. So again, for people out there that can't cope with the super cold stuff, just start with something that is tolerable rather than saying it has to be 5 degrees
Yep.
and painful, because doing something in water is better than not. So 10 minutes has value. Again, realistically doing the movement in the water and spending anywhere between 15 minutes through to 30 minutes moving in water. Sorry, just got to pour some milk for Alana.
I love it.
Multitasking. There we go. We're good. So yeah, moving in the water better than just staying still.
Okay.
But like I say, you've got to get your hydration up. If you're not hydrated, your lymphatic system is just sluggish and slow and more like the thickened honey on Alana's Wheat Bix, rather than the fluid, beautifully hydrated, just like water scenario. So it's going to move better if you're hydrated well.
Fizz, this is way more time than what probably you've got to talk to us, but I appreciate it. You're a very generous man with your time. So before we go, send us off with a song, because I've got no songs. What are you going to send us off to in the next half an hour? I know it's on the spot. You got a jukebox, you got $1 left, you got one song. What are you putting in?
Well, you know that I have my penchant for Xavier Rudd, and you didn't play his version of No Woman, No Cry last time, so let's get Xavier Rudd's No Woman, No Cry.
And people, if they want to get a hold of you, it is how? Because someone just asked, we all need a hotline to the Fizz. Yeah, we do. What a powerhouse. They're getting a hold of you how?
Caribe Sports Medicine Centre, so 283 Latrobe Terrace in Geelong. I think the phone number is 5221 8822. You can book online these days. There's some good scenarios there. So if you just Google Caribe Health Group and look at our Geelong clinic, you'll be able to find me online to book as well. So unfortunately, I'm often booked out a couple of weeks in advance.
Of course you are, mate.
You've got to plan ahead a little bit if there's specific times. The other way to get into me is actually go on the cancellation list. And because I'm often booked out and people book appointments that really don't work for them, and hopefully they're getting better because they're doing their exercise, they don't need me as much, I get a lot of late cancellation kind of stuff. So often the day of that you're trying to get in, it's not bad ringing, and you'll find there's a couple of spots that open up there too. So that's a bit of a side door entry if you've got some flexibility of time and can ring up on the day that suits. Although, say if you call the girls at reception and go onto the cancellation list, that'll often work pretty well.
Yeah, just let them know you're on really good radio. That'll get you straight through, eh?
We do our best to try and get those acute things in, especially.
Thanks, Fizz. Here's Xavier Rudd, No Woman, No Cry. We'll speak to you soon, brother. Have a good day.
Pleasure. Thanks, RGR.